What's going on, Collecting Keys crew? So we have a little repost for you today because I just got back from a month-long trip around Southeast Asia, which was awesome, but I wasn't able to get enough pre-recordings done before I left. And so we are doing a repost of our most popular episode from 2024 today. And coincidentally, it's actually great because this is an episode with Dylan that just happens to be our most popular one for the year. No wonder we brought him on as our third host. And it's from this past April, and it's a really great deep dive into all the things that he has done to build his success that allowed him to leave his high-paying pharmaceutical job. So enjoy this episode with Dylan. And then also to a little ask for you guys, we are always looking for new guests. As you know, about 12 or so weeks ago, we kind of transitioned the people that we're bringing on the show to have them be more like relatable operators. Here's the thing that we found is it's shockingly hard to find like good operators that actually have value add and, are active in the business, actually building out and trying to grow it. Most people that we get that apply for the show, they either are like trying to shill something, some kind of service, their own coaching, whatever, or they are people that basically had success like before 2021 jump, right? And they haven't really done anything since. And their now full-time job is like, I am a podcast person and I manage my property managers, which really isn't that interesting. And so if you have any recommendations on people who want to be on the show, or if you're a good operator and you want to be on the show yourself, then hit me up on Instagram at Mike_invests. I would love to connect with more potential guests because honestly, it's just hard to find people. And so going over the next little bit, we might kind of move away from interviews a little bit just because I don't want more professional podcasters or people shilling whatever. People just don't have a lot to say because let's be honest, no one wants to listen to that. Our download numbers show that no one wants to listen to that. And so I'm trying to keep stuff as high quality as we can. Otherwise, I might as well just reduce the amount of work that we're doing than just getting on 10 shitty guests. So hit me up on Mike_invest if you have a good prospect for us that would be a good guest. Otherwise, enjoy the show with Dylan. It's a great one. I remember doing this one a little while back, and there's a ton of great knowledge in here for you.
At the beginning, it was way too much transactional focused. Like, hey, your house needs 50 grand of work. That's why the offer is this, right? And I think those initial months I talked about from October to March, I didn't do deals, not because I didn't have leads, but probably because I was shit at converting.
What's going on, everyone? Today, Mike and I are joined with our good friend and Scale community member, Dylan Koch. He is what I would call a solopreneur that's out there crushing it right now. And I say solopreneur because really it's just him kind of running everything. He has some VAs and others working for him. And despite him trying to hire acquisition managers here recently, because he is trying to scale, he's also a great example of how you can have a 7-figure business and it just be you running it. His story's amazing, how he went from hating his job as a pharmacist, and just diving in headfirst, quitting that job and becoming a wholesaler, flipper, property owner. I think he has 41 units now. Last year, in his first full year of this, he hit $600,000 in top line revenue. And I know this year for a fact, he's going to be over 7 figures. And he's just absolutely doing a very fantastic job at all levels of his business. He's not extraordinary. He just really is committing. He's putting in the hard work, and he is showing everyone that you can really do a ton with just yourself. So I think listen to this one. At the end, he gives some fantastic tidbits for people just getting started on really what he calls feeling the fear and just leaning into it and going forward, because it took him 5 or 6 months to get his first deal, and he made $5,500 after spending like 30 grand in marketing and other business expenses. It's a lot like Mike and I's story, and you can see with us, we've scaled beyond that, and Dylan's a proof that you can scale beyond that too. So I hope you enjoy this episode.
We are here today with Dylan Koch, who is a longtime Scale member now and a really, really impressive investor who has built out one of the more solid businesses that we have seen, especially for a one-man operator. And dude, I'm super excited to have you on the show today, because when I look at just like, I would say smaller time businesses and individuals that are relatively new to the game that have sort of taken things by storm, you're one of the first people that comes to mind. So thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me. And obviously you guys have contributed to much of that success. So I'm happy to dive in today.
I appreciate that. And I mean, you are obviously actively engaged in Scale, which helps a lot, but I definitely don't want to undermine like your own effort that you put in. We've had several other members that have been in for just as long as you and longer and haven't accomplished nearly as much. So you're obviously doing something right. But for people who have never heard about you before, give us a little bit of a rundown. I guess first off, let's say this. what exactly does your business look like right now? And then we can backtrack into how you got there.
Yeah. So I guess since we're only 3 months in, the 2023 numbers, which was my first like full-time year doing this, we did around 30 deals, which was just under like 600,000 in revenue. And that those were the transactional side. So basically wholesales and flips. And then in the duration since I've been doing this, not just in 2023, but we've added 41 rental units. And then so far in 2024, we're 2 months in, we've done 8 deals, 4 and 4. March will actually be surprisingly a little bit slower, but we have some more in the pipeline. So I think that's a good synopsis for now.
Nice. So I guess your first full year, about 600K, and you've accumulated 40 something rental units. And then overall, you've been doing this for what, 3 years overall?
Well, my first rental was in 2018, but I left my W-2 back in 2021, October 2021. Yeah.
Okay.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah.
And of those like 41 doors, because I know you've been doing some like trading up. What does that look like? What does your portfolio look like?
Yeah, so it's a 13 unit mixed use building. We bought 12 units. Seller finance was like a 4 unit, 2 duplexes in that. We have 3 other duplexes. That was a seller finance deal. They're all adjacent to each other that we bought. And then another 4 unit. And I think if you add all those up, it's 41.
Yeah, that's nice. Awesome. So yeah, and a lot of that seller financing and creative structures from the seller, right?
And one of them was a 1031 that was for the 13 unit. So that was a single family that was actually an Airbnb. Yeah. Didn't go obviously as what we thought it would. So we had a bunch of equity in there and transitioned that in.
You just did it wrong, dude. Airbnbs are easy. It's the way that you quadruple your cash flow.
Yeah.
You know,
they're luckily we had if we made it a traditional rental, it still would have worked. But, just return on equity was low. So it was time to move it up.
Yeah. Nice. Question on that before we dive too much into the rest of your business, because I'm just curious because I haven't got a chance to talk to you about this. With the mixed use building, anything worth noting there? Like it's interesting to me that you were able to pick up mixed use building and then how you underwrote it and all that sort of stuff. Like, did you look at it as like a commercial like first or a residential? Because I'm guessing it's rentals above, like residential rentals above like a main retail.
Yeah, so good question, Dan. Yeah. I basically mailed this guy about a different piece of property, a 4 unit that he owned. He's like, I don't want to sell this, but I have this thing that I've owned for 40 years that I don't have any depreciation left. So he was like, I'd be willing to sell this. And it was built like the 1920 something. I'm the third owner. Wow. But essentially it's 4 retail units on the bottom. It's like an insurance agent, a salon, a barbershop, and like this gaming room facility thing. And then 9 apartments on top. And the apartments, like we feel comfortable underwriting, but these were already kind of leased out. And so I just underwrote it how it currently sat and if it made sense. And then there's enough room, even with the apartments alone, to increase rents and make it make sense. And I wouldn't even need the 4 bottom units. Right. So it was kind of a safer play at that point. But yeah, I was still evaluating on like a cap rate perspective, if that's what you're getting at. And there's a guy local in my market who owns a ton of commercial. And I was able to lean on him and be like, hey, what should I look for as far as leases, environmental studies, some of the stuff that you don't really see in a typical residential transaction.
Nice. Right on. Awesome. And a lot of this you've done over the past while. I mean, you've been, as far as I can tell, the only operator in your business. I know you've had a couple VAs off and on. I know at one point you hired a acquisition manager that was supposed to come to the sales training that we have, and he no-showed, and that was his last day at work.
First and last day.
Yeah. Correct. So you're just completely running the entire ship by yourself.
Yeah, right now it's me, a full-time VA, a bookkeeper, part-time bookkeeper. And then I do have a guy that's like commission-based that calls like some foreclosure leads for me. But then I'm running everything else.
You run everything else. Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's a huge limiting belief that tends to hold people back as they think that they need to have all these teams.
Well, and I think too the scale, because you're pretty good at, I think, like you're an analytical person, but also you're pretty good at talking to people, Dylan. And so like, it seems to me you can bounce back and forth between roles as needed. But to speak to what your numbers last year, you said you did 600,000. So that's basically a solo operator, 600,000 in revenue. Like you don't have to have a team to get to probably 7 figures. I'm guessing if you added in all your equity and stuff last year, you're probably close to 7 figures.
Yeah. If you add in the equity, yes. For sure.
Sure. Well, I mean, to be fair, you do have a huge advantage because you came from a background where you were selling annuities and you were a used car salesman. So you were really all that stuff, right? No, I'm kidding.
No, he was a drug dealer, right?
Yeah, I know. No, you didn't come from that at all. So that's my segue into what is your past look like, and how did you get into this business?
Yeah. So long story short is I went to pharmacy school down here in Cincinnati. So I went to 6 years of schooling, and I graduated pharmacy school in 2017. I was 24 years old, making low six figures, and I thought I was on top of the world, right? But I also always had an interest in, like, I guess finance is a better room, like whether it be stocks or personal finance. Like my parents were always kind of good with that stuff.
Crypto.
Well, you can get in that if you want, but
I don't.
Yeah. No.
anyway, now you threw me off, Dan. I always had a back of my mind thing for investing, right? And so I started with the bigger pockets rabbit hole. I basically went from a Dave Ramsey to Robert Kiyosaki, like switched during that time frame. And so I bought my first house back in June of 2018. The lived-in unit, one unit, ran out the other, and it was honestly, I probably bought it way too high. But anything you bought in 2017 made sense nowadays, right? So
for sure.
I lucked out, and then basically I was continuing my career. I kept moving up. I managed a local store down here. But pharmacy, in my opinion, especially retail facing, kept getting worse and worse. It's just as far as like cutting hours, increased scripts, and then COVID happened. Like it was just a mess. And I hated going to work every day. And we were at a point in my life where I was married to my wife, who's also a pharmacist, right? So she makes decent money. We've lived well below our means, and we've lived for like with intention for a long time. So we had like some money set aside. So I was basically like, F it. Like, it's now or never to try to do this wholesaling or investing full time. And that's when, so it's October of 2021 when I left.
Yeah. Wow. And I appreciate that, Dylan, that you kind of went through that same past, because something that I hear regularly with my backstory, I left my career as an engineer, and everyone's always like, oh, well, how'd you were you able to do that? And, how was that risk justified and all these things? But I was doing the exact same thing as you. We had like a decent income. We lived frugally for a while beforehand. And then ultimately when you kind of, I don't know, that you're not going to be a fuck up, right? And you're like, that you're going to be able to figure your own shit out because you learned how to get a decent career. You've learned how to hold down a good job. You've learned how to save money. You understand finance. It's really not that hard, honestly, to get enough of a nest egg to be able to make the leap. But most people just aren't patient enough. And
one thing I like about what Dylan said was like lived intentionally. I mean, that's really what you're talking about, right? Living intentionally with a plan and a strategy, and then understanding like what you're saying, Mike, is like, hey, I've been able to do all of this. What's keeping you from doing the same going forward, just in a different context?
Yeah. Right. And like the other part of that story is the career that we were on. Like you start out high at a young age, don't get me wrong, but you're pretty much plateaued. Like you don't have an exponential way to make money. And you can type in those, compound interest calculators all day, maxing out 401ks, IRAs, HSAs. And you'll be a millionaire, but at what, 65, 67.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I thought there was like things like you could open the back door and throw pills out to your friends and they'll sell them for you.
Or jail, that could be jail. A good one. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. How did that discussion go with your wife though, when you decided to make the leap?
Definitely like it was a work in progress, right? Like, I had exhibited some kinds of success from the house hack. We bought some traditional rentals, like the 25% down stuff. So we had some like thing I could look and be like, hey, like this is working, right? I actually kind of know what I'm doing. And eventually it was just like, she's kind of analytical too, being a pharmacist. So I was like able to break it down. Like, here's what we spend every month. Here's our savings. And we had like $30,000 or so, $40,000 in savings. And I was like, let me just try this. And if it doesn't work, I can go back to being a pharmacist. Right. So like, I really was like a no lose situation at that point.
For sure.
Yeah. Is your wife more conservative than you? Like as far as like just finances and stuff like that? Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
But she trusts me too on the other side of that. Right.
That's good.
So,
yeah.
That's really good.
So is she still a pharmacist?
She is. And there are plans where, once we do start having a family and whatnot, at least being in the position to make that optional. Not saying that that will happen because maybe she'll want to keep working. I don't know. But as of right now, she's still a pharmacist. I'm on her benefits, full disclosure. Like that obviously helps. But even with our current portfolio, we probably don't need to be. We could do that like slim fire stuff if we wanted to. But we just have bigger ambitions. So this makes more sense to keep going.
Well, I think it
I
goes
mean,
back to you said living intentionally, right? She has a choice, is what I hear you saying. If she wants to, she can. If she doesn't want to go back to work, she doesn't have to.
Right.
yeah. I mean, and I'm assuming that she's still there. She probably doesn't hate it.
No, I mean, I would not classify it as hate. Not as much as I did,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Well, I guess I asked that because this is always a big thing that comes up. So my wife left her job a couple years ago now. God, it's 18 months ago, not quite a couple years ago. And when she did that, a lot of people were, I don't know, like congratulating as like this big thing and whatever. But it's like the point is, it's all about that freedom, right, and that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And I've known a lot of men that have like had these goals that like they want to be able to retire their wife and one different things. And I actually got into a big debate with a bunch of abundance guys about this. And I said, do your wives actually want to leave their jobs?
Right.
Like I understand that you think that would be cool if they would, and that would sort of justify yourself, I guess, but like maybe they don't want to, and that's sort of an important thing to keep in mind.
That's a valid comment.
Like,
Yeah, no,
seriously.
I think to your point, like it would have to be at least the minimum something part-time, right? Just like being home 40 hours a week, I don't know. I don't think there's a way that you could do that.
Well, exactly. They have to create themselves somewhere. Like, I mean, I guess if you have kids, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
But if it meant to be like a
You get a little baby at home, and like she's pretty happy. That's what happened to my wife. She just really, after her second kid, we both kind of stayed home for like 4 months, but she really kind of got into that groove, and like going back to work became less and less interesting to her. And so throw a little baby in there. She wants to stay home.
Yeah. Well, and like I guess along the same lines, we haven't, even though we've made decent money, like obviously I just said, we haven't taken any of that as like personal income. I don't know if you remember at KeysCon, what you guys made me do, but like I haven't, that has all been reinvested, pretty much everything. So we basically live off my wife's income, and like everything else has just been poured back into the business and the portfolio.
Yeah. Right. And at KeysCon, so everybody knows, Dylan came to our first in-person for the Scale community this past November, and I made him take a $50,000 draw from his
I remember we were all
account.
sitting there in the kitchen, and you told us how much you had in your bank account, your business account. Mike's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Well, then it's just the contrast is for like business was up here, personal was way down here. And so, that's what it was.
Exactly.
Sure. So cool. So what did that transition look like? Let's dive into that. So you decided you're going to go full-time into real estate. What exactly did that mean? Like how did you sort of make that transition? How did you adjust your day-to-day? What were kind of your first steps?
Yeah. So with the thesis being like everything, I wanted more rentals. At the beginning, it was all about the passive income, get to a certain dollar amount.
Yeah.
And anything on the MLS didn't make sense. I couldn't make pencil. And so I just started trying to figure out, the direct to seller route, because I had heard it on Bigger Pockets and all these podcasts and stuff. And we both, at some point, we were both in the, another mastermind, which was Ryan Dossey's mastermind. And that was the first thing I did. I joined that. And that was like this every day I was kind of just devouring content, I guess, which was YouTube videos, the Kajabi courses, and then sending out the mail too. I was actually doing it. I set up all the systems. But basically all day, 8 hours, 10 hours a day, I was in the systems, going on appointments, cold calling people. And those three things were probably what I did most often. And obviously networking, finding buyers. I don't know if that really answers your question, because I didn't do a whole lot of different things. I just basically worked on generating as many leads as I could.
I mean, that perfectly answers the question, right? You did the thing that would obviously lead you to the next investment opportunity, which is talking to people and, identifying opportunities, I guess, right?
Did you actually start your like wholesale business before you quit pharmacy, or was that like, hey, you quit pharmacy to do it?
Quit pharmacy to do it, with the caveat that like I had sent out some direct mail in the past.
Okay, so you kind of dabbled. Okay. I was just, because like the
those
amount
were
of
all
work
like
takes a lot.
300 to 400 piece mailers at a time, that trying to find my next like duplex or floor plan or something.
Right,
they weren't with the intention of the wholesaling or flipping.
Yeah. So when you were in that phase where you were just hunting those opportunities, I guess like, did you have like a daily process that you ran? Or were you just kind of like throwing spaghetti against the wall and trying to find your thing?
Dude, honestly, like I don't, even today, like my systems aren't where they need to be. I would classify myself as like a good hustlepreneur. Like I kind of just do what's necessary. And of course that's like burnt me a couple times with like, the first time I did this, my financials were a mess. So like when tax time came, it was rough, but yeah, it was just, I download the list stack, skip trace, and start cold calling. right? And then that would generate a bunch of leads. I'd follow up with the leads, present offers, and if I wasn't doing that, I'd try to find buyers and reverse wholesale some of these too. So like, right, like what were these people looking for, and just trying to play the matchmaker.
Yeah. And so I guess doing that, how long did it take for you to get your first deal sent around?
So like I said, I quit in October. I didn't get my first deal till March. And I had spent probably around 30 grand at that point, not all in marketing, but just in general. And it was like a $5,500 wholesale fee. So I was still very much like in the red.
That tracks.
Yeah, right. But it was, I mean, at the beginning at that point, it was like more operating out of fear almost. Like I got to prove to myself I'm going to do this, because going back to pharmacy would have been like admittance of failure, I guess.
Yeah.
And so it was more like, I need to prove to myself that I can do this. And so I just kept hustling and grinding until I think that first, I actually have my spreadsheet up. I think in 2022, even after only doing a deal in March, we ended with 374,000 in top line.
Nice.
That's good.
Awesome.
Yeah. So what is going on in your head? You said operating out of fear, but between October and March, and then March getting only 5,500, because that doesn't mean all of a sudden you're doing well. Like, what was going on? Like, how were you even surviving? Because I know a lot of people would probably quit by December.
Well, one, I probably had a misalignment of expectations of how quick it was going to. I just thought it was going to be God's gift to earth and send out one batch of mail and then get, 4 or 5 deals. Yeah. Like, but it's so much harder than people tell you at the beginning. But I never stopped the marketing though. So like it just kind of just snowball on itself, and more leads came in. Don't get me wrong, there's times I'm like, the fuck, I might not make this. And but as the leads kept coming in, and just finding the buyers and squeezing someone out, and then, you get your 5, 6, 7s, $2,000 wholesale fees, but then you could maybe get a $30,000 one. Now you're looking pretty good. Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
it is interesting though, like how recurring those sort of like number patterns are, right? Where that like 4 to 6 month and $20,000 to $30,000 in like actual spend to get the first one. I mean, that was pretty much same as what we've seen that with other community members that come through and have the same pattern. And honestly, I think that's just almost like the mental/emotional check to sort of see who actually has what it takes to be successful or not. Because most people quit because they get to like that third month and they're $15,000 in and they're just like, man, I don't think I can hang with this anymore.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm not saying like if people's listening to this and like, fuck, I have a W-2, I can't commit some of this. Like you can definitely still do it. But I think a lot of the success that I had at the beginning just comes from the fact that I was able to work on this 8 to 12 hours a day for months at a time, months straight.
Yeah. But yeah, and you're also an agent too, right? So I guess how do you balance that out with the wholesale stuff?
Well, I have my agent's license. I wouldn't I don't help buyers find homes. I I just kind of have it. So
probably good because you can't do that anymore. So
right. Yeah. Actually, before we got on this call, I was listening to that. My broker had a meeting about it. But anyway, I mean, it's disclosed on like all my contracts and stuff saying that we're not acting in a fiduciary duty. But the way I did it was, one, I have access to data on the MLS. 2, I could sell my own flips and save 3%. And is that the best use of my time? I would argue yes now, and it's a $500,000 house. And then 3, if I do get these leads that come in and they are wanting to sell, but they want retail and their house is in retail condition, I can at least refer it out to someone and collect a referral fee off of that.
Yeah. How do you balance like having the wholesale conversation with sellers without it being like a conflict of interest on the realtor side?
I mean, pretty much everything from the beginning is just like, hey, I'm also an agent, and I can give you really, I always approach it from investor first, right? So like if you want to like the quick, easy transaction, this is what we can offer you. These are the timelines, these are the scenarios. But if they actually want like more money and it's actually a fit, there's no other underlying motivation there. So it's like, hey, I know this guy over at, in my brokerage, he'd be a good fit for you. He can help you. And I don't really just have the pass off. Like I don't really have much conversations with those people outside of that, like that point forward.
Yeah. It's just an easier way to pivot. And I like how you say I approach it from investor first, because too often people immediately go to, well, I'm an agent because this conversation is getting hard. Let me try to list your property because some money's better than no money. When in reality, you're paying the marketing and the bill you're paying is to find off market deals. And if you try to pivot too quickly to just being an agent for all these sellers, you're not going to make it in the business.
Right. Right. And like in the contract, it has my license number, it says, all this kind of stuff. I had my lawyer look at it. So like from a conflict of interest, I think if you're just like truthful with these people and tell like just disclose that you're an agent,
Yeah.
and that you're looking to buy their house and not list their
Right.
house, I don't really see any.
Well, in reality, what I found over the years when it comes to the agent thing, I think what you're saying is absolutely the right thing to do. But when people call us, they don't really, the whole agent thing or not agent thing, they don't really understand that as long as you're clear of like, I'm the one buying your house, but I happen to be an agent, like that disclosure piece to the seller isn't a big deal. As long as you're trying to tell, as long as they're not calling you thinking you're an agent that's going to sell their house and you're an agent that's trying to buy their house.
Yes, correct. Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one of the biggest questions we get like all the time is around agents that are interested in doing investing or wholesale real estate. And there's always so many different opinions over which.
Well, I mean, at least in my market, wholesaling has a low barrier to entry. And so some of these people that come in, I mean, just like with anything, they're piece of shit human beings. And so sometimes they get a bad rep for a good reason. Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of times those agents that have those negative experiences are the ones that have those opinions.
Really, we should all be thankful for Pace 2 and the Sub 2 group because they pull all the shitheads that way. Like wholesaling's cleaner now than it ever
kind
has
of
been
do.
before.
You're right.
Like honestly,
yeah. And that's probably actually now you say that, Mike. That's a fascinating observation because as he's grown, as his like magnetic force has pulled people in, the wholesaling side of the business, like the direct seller side, has actually become like a lot more professional. Like we've always
really
talked about
has.
like how much more competitive it is and how people like the level of the operators are much higher than it used to be.
100%.
Because they're still there. They're just sucked over to Pace's shithole.
Yeah. we should make an episode about that, like an open thank you to him for taking all of the scumbags from the wholesale industry. That would actually be awesome.
I'll sign the petition. Yeah.
You sign the petition, yeah. So how did you, a big thing that I always find impressive with you, Dylan, is the fact that you didn't come from any sort of sales background, but you learned that skill set, which I think honestly is the hardest part of the off-market real estate game for people to develop is like, how do you actually get good at talking to sellers? Like we talk to so many people that come from like engineering backgrounds or like, corporate-y sort of background, like project manager backgrounds where they're not customer facing at all. Mm-hmm. And that's like, honestly, why most of them suck. I mean, even within Scale, we have a lot of folks where we've done like sales review and things like that with them. And I'm just like, man, like this poor person. Like, I don't even know like what to tell them to get better at it. Yeah. So I guess what's your perspective on that? Like, were you kind of just able to pick it up because you're personable, or did you have to go through and get your bumps and bruises?
I definitely had to get my bumps and bruises. And so I will say being a retail pharmacist helped because I had to dissolve situations all the time just with like customers who are...
You had to upsell Vicodin and other stuff?
Yeah, there's no upsells. It's just like really calming people down, honestly, was the most part of it because they get pissed off. Like their insurance won't cover it or they can't get their pain pills early, all the kind of stuff that can go wrong. But so I had some experience with that, but also at the beginning, it was way too much transactional focused. Like, hey, your house needs 50 grand of work. That's why the offer's this, right? And I think those initial months that I talked about from October to March, I didn't do deals, not because I didn't have leads, but probably because I was shit at converting. And so I did read some like sales books. I think Pitch Anything was one. I read The Way of the Wolf. I mean, he's a shitty human being, but some of his stuff works for sales.
Right.
And just repetition. And I think what I'm good at now, if I had to put like a small differentiator out there, would be just meeting people where they are, right? So you can tell if they're, in the countryside and have MAGA flags and Trump hats and all this kind of stuff, or if they're a sophisticated guy who wants to sell a 12-unit apartment building. Like, being able to have those different conversations with these people, I think goes a long way.
I like how you made those two the comparisons, either the MAGA person or the sophisticated guy.
Those
I was waiting for you to say like, or they're the person that has like a pot shop and they're like a hippie,
You could take that there's so many different classifications of people that you have to be able to deal with. So
I mean, you're in Ohio too, man. That stuff matters out there. It's like one of the only states.
Nah, dude, they're moderate. Swings depends on who he wants this year.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's funny. So I know one of the other things too is you've with the hiring piece. I mean, we talked about at the beginning about how you've been mostly like a solo operatorship with like a VA. That's not without trying. So like, what do you think? I mean, like hiring acquisition managers and, sales members, things like that is one of the most discussed pieces of this business. You've struggled with this. Like, why do you think that is? What are your sort of perspectives on like as a newer I would say like business leader trying to
Good
conquer that?
question. So I bet now it's been like three people who basically said yes, and then like a couple days before said like, "Sorry, bro, I'm out."
And at
And
what point do you look in a mirror and wonder what's wrong with you?
Like,
it
why?
could I could be, man. I guess I gotta do that, but I haven't posted the job in a while, and I need to do that.
Mm.
But I just got swamped with other sides of the business, but not making excuses. So basically, I think the first two were basically like I think they were people they were agents who were struggling, um, and they basically saw like this opportunity, and when they told their broker that they were going to leave, their broker's like, "You don't want to do that." Talked them into it, and
Yeah.
one guy was younger. I think his parents had something to do with it too. Um, I don't really have a good answer for you, Mike, because I feel confident in my ability that the person that comes along is going to be able to make great money and be treated fairly. But
Mhm.
maybe I am not resonating that correctly when I'm having these
Sure.
interviews with them.
Well, I
Or
think
in
one thing
those.
that you said that, not, sorry to cut you off. One thing that you
No,
said was that there are two agents that were failing. They wanted to come to your business. Like, I don't know that you even want a failing agent in your business because they're failing at this. Why would they be successful at something over here? And so maybe it was just a bad batch of applicants, and maybe you lean too much into, hey, they know real estate, so maybe they'll be okay in my business.
yeah, that could be very well be part of it. And some of it was like none of them. I don't know many people who spend the amount of money we do to generate leads. So it's almost like
No.
once the leads come in, would they be okay once the leads came in instead of like the lead generation part? So if I can fix the lead generation part, can they do the lead converting part? But I haven't had a lot of success with this, and I know when I do bring someone on, unless they're a natural seller, I feel like I'm still going to do a lot of hand holding through that time frame, and I haven't been able to convince myself to do that one step back to take three steps forward thing quite yet, which I know I
Yeah.
need to get to like the revenue that I want to do, but here we are.
Yeah.
That's hard. I honestly think that that's one of the hardest parts of entrepreneurship is that one step back for three steps forward, because the problem is it's not like you do a step back for like a week and then it's three steps forward next week, right? You're really doing one step back for like a month or like 2 months. And then you're hoping that 6 months down the line, things have moved forward.
What
Right.
I
I
was
had
thinking about
50,
that was like you step out of your sales role, but you become a sales manager. So it's not like you're getting any less time, like or any more time to yourself. Now you're just a sales manager at that point.
yes, I guess that's true. But like even now, because I'm a one man show, I have 50 tasks on Ari Simply that I need to go through, that are overdue, that are mostly lead follow up, right?
Yep.
And so like it's being like Dylan, okay, go hire someone to do these instead of just bust through these, because that's always kind of been my
Yeah.
mentality is just
Yep.
run through the wall and get stuff done. That's how I was successful at the beginning, but it's the whole like what I forget the expression like, but what got you here won't get you there kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's also very challenging as well. And you're in like that funny revenue range where obviously you've done very well. You get the majority of the fruits for your labor. Every single person you bring on, you kind of have to like give that up a little bit in the near term. And I mean, I think also too that there is nothing wrong with being a solo operator for a while if that's meeting your
Yep.
financial goals and you kind of, you're okay with that. So I guess on that note, like, what are your goals over the next little bit? Like, what are your ambitions over there in Cincinnati?
Yeah. So, I mean, I am kind of happy with where we're average like 3 or 4 deals a month where we're making. I still have the passive income like kind of ingrained in my head. So I want to grow a decent sized portfolio here in my market. Just 100 units. Don't ask me why that is, but it also has a cash flow aspect to it too. But, and then it's making as much money as I can with wholesaling and flipping. And maybe pay some of those off, live at a 50% LTV on the portfolio, and then decide like, okay, do I want to do this forward? Or do you want to go into another venture? Do just having, again, the optionality to do that.
Sure.
But I want my business to be at least 7 figures top line per year. And I know I'm probably going to have to bring someone else on and I guess transitioning a little bit, when my wife and I do start, having kids, I know I won't be able to work as much as I'm working now because I work a shit ton now.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of getting those pieces in place now where when the time is right, it's not like you're not scrambling at the last second to try to put those pieces together.
Just for context for people to know, like, because I feel like you are like a good person to aspire to for many of the listeners is when you say you work a shit ton, like right now, how much are you working?
anywhere from I'd say minimum's always 8, but it's usually
Yeah.
probably 10 a day,
10,
at least
10
6 days a week. Yeah.
at least. Okay. Yeah. That's what I was going to say. There's probably at least during the weekdays, you're at least 10 to 12, and then probably time on the weekends as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just posted that contract on Saturday in our Slack channel.
I know. I
you
did
go.
see that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's how you got to
You
make
know-
money.
No matter how much people systematize, you just can't, especially early on, you cannot get away from hard work.
Nope.
In one capacity or the other.
Well, and I think there's something to be said. Like you could say it's hard work, and there's a difference though, because I guarantee you'd probably work 16 hours a day before you go back to being a pharmacy working for somebody else. Like it is work, but you're the one getting to direct it.
Mhm.
Yep. And the like only devil's advocate thing I'd say is I can get like I need to do like the time audit thing where I'd be like working on leads, something comes up, I'll go take care of that. Like it's not really time blocked, whereas like the traditional role, you like, hey, do this for 4 hours, do this for 4 hours, right?
Yeah, I could see you right now. You're probably doing like lead follow up, doing something else, and you're like, oh shit, I got to pay the water bill at one of my 41 units.
Dude, happens way too much one day.
Yeah.
That I would like to admit.
Yeah. So awesome, man. Well, really cool. We're going to dive into our end of show questions here as we start to wind down. So our first question, and I know that you have some good ones since we exchanged some of the stories in our Scale Slack community. But what is your craziest real estate investing story that you have?
I'll go with a more sad one, I guess, but it's one that came to mind. So basically it's one that I walked the property. It was a foreclosure lead, great school district, great part of town. But after we walked it was the first time that I had to consider like, what is my either legal or moral obligation to call like child protective services on like some of these people, because it was filthy. There's dog shit everywhere. They didn't have running water. You couldn't even see the floor. Like there's mold everywhere. And like these people were living there. This was their home. And so I know that's just part of this business that probably people don't talk about a lot. And I mean, eventually we really didn't act upon anything because the house got actually sold to somebody else rather quickly, who offered way too much in my opinion, but that would be my story.
Yeah.
So like that's a sad one because it's kind of tough in the situation, and Mike and I have had to deal with this before, where it's like, what is worse, like the kid's current situation, or what would happen if you called the Child Protective Services? You know, it's a tough thing to do.
Yeah.
And also how incredibly complex that is. I mean, we did one where there was literally 8 kids that were padlocked in a bedroom.
I mean, that won't come on. Not actively padlocked in the bedroom.
They weren't. You're right. When we were there, the moment that we were there, well, I guess you were there, the padlock was unlocked, and they were out for recess in the living room that was full of dead animals.
It was gross, dude. We're still to this day the worst smelling building I've been in. I've been in some bad shits.
Yeah.
So that's a sad one. I know you got a good one. That's not a sad one. There must be one that comes to mind right away.
I think one of my favorite ones. So we cold called a lady about it. It was just like on a high equity list, and it was for one duplex. And I walked it. It's in this great area of Cincinnati, and I met her husband, her brother, and his brother's wife. Yeah. So basically, this whole family owned these buildings together, and eventually, ended up being the 12 units that we seller financed. So it was. We bought for a set amount. We put 6% down. They carried 3% debt, which is $1.5 million in debt for 10 years. And the reason that was good is because to get that deal, we had dinner together. I went over to their house a couple of times. And by the end of it, it was just like the true, I don't know, almost felt like a friendship kind of a thing. But it was a win-win for everybody.
Nice. Yeah, that's always good on stuff like that too. Man, you got fed and you did. I mean, the one time Dan got fed, it was by eating shrimp toast from some old dude's Asian wife that was 50 years younger than him that he mail ordered.
English. Yeah,
I remember I'd offered stuff from sellers before that I turned down just because I was like, I don't want to have what you're offering.
Yeah,
but,
I've definitely thrown stuff away right as I walked out of their house.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, but nice. Yeah, that's a sick deal too. Yeah, what does that one net cash flow you every single month?
Right now, probably around $4,000.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Net after all expenses.
Well, I had to put some money in to get the rents where they are, but yeah.
Either way,
Still, that's
a
pretty sweet.
deal. So cool. All right, Next question. What is the number one tip you would have for a small time investor looking to take their business to the next level?
I would say if you're just starting out, unless you have like a different personality, it's probably going to feel scary. So just like feel the fear and do it anyway. And then be consistent. I think if you give yourself enough runway for 3 to 6 months at a time, it's really hard to fail. At least if you keep attempting at it, and then at least you can diagnose the problem too. If it's a lead problem, if it's a sales problem, and then just adjust accordingly.
Sure.
Super valuable. Feel the fear.
Yeah. And I mean, I think a big thing that helps with that too is getting around other investors, right? And people that are running the same businesses. Like, you were involved in CCF with us beforehand. Now you're super involved in Scale. And I think such an underrated thing is like finding people that are actually building similar businesses to what you're trying to build. So many people, they go into like these other really broad things. They try to find people that are local that aren't necessarily as ambitious or as driven. And it's just not a comparable at that point.
Right. So being around the other people, like obviously I have the Scale community with you guys. I made a good network with people around here that I know. And some of the deals we do now are from referrals too. But so that's a big part of it. But to give like some context to what you're saying, I think I don't know what month I joined Scale, but after I did, what I like about you guys is everything that's out there is geared towards being a real estate investor, not a business owner. And that's where you guys, I feel like you differentiate yourself. So my business has, I guess that'd be just under 2x since I joined you guys from that year.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I don't know, for people listening, just do with that information as you wish.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that because like, honestly, that's become a challenging thing with like the Collecting Keys brand is we are business owners more so than real estate investors right now. And so like when we have our stuff, our real estate content's actually pretty lame because we're too busy running the business and our team, like they're doing real estate stuff, but we aren't.
When's the last time either you talked to a seller?
I actually talked to one last week.
I'm trying to think,
but
mine was
that was
like 6 weeks ago.
that was the last one. That was the most recent one. And before that was probably 6 or 8 months.
Yeah.
So we'll get on when it's complicated or we're like interested, especially if it's a local deal. Like I'm down to clown when it's local stuff just because I get, sometimes you never know what you see.
Exactly. Yeah. So the one that I did last week, it was because there was somebody on Bigger Pockets. I got flagged saying that somebody talked about Spokane and somebody said they were trying to sell a duplex and I hit them up. And
that's just hustler though. That has nothing to do with our business. That's just
literally not our business. This is just me trying to get an opportunity. And I'm talking about subject to transaction with this this guy that's trying to get out from underneath this duplex that he overbought. It's literally not through our pipeline. That's just me seeing the opportunity and trying to get after it.
Yeah. Love for the game, baby.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, I like to talk to good sellers. You know how this is too, Dylan. You've been around for a while. Like talking to good sellers is fun, or like, other investors or, people that like literally do have a problem. What is the hard part about this business is when you've built that big lead funnel to find motivated individuals and you're dealing with the crackheads, you're dealing with people that have no personal or financial responsibility. You're dealing with the people that are like kind of all over just like with their lives and every other piece. And so, the transaction is going to be hard. That's what I hire my team for. They can deal with it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. But to the solopreneurs that are out there, that's another, like the mental piece of this, because if you pick up the phone and dial 50 people and get told to fuck off 49 times, I don't care who you are. That's tough.
Right.
Yes. And so being around other people obviously helps with that. Like, just today I posted something like, look at this message I got. And now it's like humorous, like, for some of the group. Right. So just being able to share that with people helps.
And other people share it. And then you're like, okay, cool. I'm not the only one.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So everyone has stories. That's the easiest way to identify if someone actually is in the game or not, is if they have those sort of interactions with people. And if there are those out there who are like, oh no, all of our sellers are easy. I'm like, well, that means you don't do shit. Because I know you're probably being very choosy about what you pursue and you're not doing a lot of volume because it's impossible.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So, awesome. All right. Where can people find you, follow you, and reach out to you?
Yeah. I wouldn't say I'm active, but I have all the social media handles. I think all of them. Just type in my name, which is Dylan Koch, or just 11 D Cook on social media platforms, and I should pop right up.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And you've been doing a handful of other podcasts too. You're just on Real Estate Rockstars and
Yeah.
you're doing
Big
a few other
dog.
ones. So
Yeah.
see,
I don't think I realized how big that podcast was until
Real Estate Rockstars is really big.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I got some DMs after that. I'm like, oh shit, there's a lot of people that listen to this.
Right.
Yeah. I think it's probably the biggest like agent podcast right now.
It's definitely good.
It's been around for a long time.
And they're good people. They're good people over there too. So
yeah, they are. So cool. Dylan, well, really appreciate you coming on the show, my man. And you guys, you should definitely reach out to Dylan if you want to hear any more about how he has grown his hustlepreneur business. I mean, as you can tell, he has been doing this for incredibly long, but he's built a really solid income for himself and a very, very impressive portfolio. And also, too, I'm guessing that if anyone's in Cincinnati, you'd be more than happy to network with him as well.
100%.
100%. Cool. Awesome, guys. Well, reach out to Dylan and go and share this episode with anybody who thinks that they are not capable of building a real estate business, because Dylan has showed you that you absolutely are, because he had no background, no sales background, a little bit of real estate knowledge, and he decided to take the leap and figure it out. So you can do the same thing.
Heck yeah. Stop selling drugs, started wholesaling houses.
Exactly. From selling drugs to wholesaling houses.
That's the name of this.
went
Went
from
from the podcast episode.
Yeah,
You're gonna be so let down.
went from selling drugs to buying houses from drug dealers. Pretty
Yeah,
much.
can't wait to share that with my mom.
Please do.
Perfect. So awesome, everybody. Well, thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
See y'all.